All right, so far we've got the block in place. We've put the crankshaft in place. One thing to note on the crankshaft notice how it's flush with my overhang. Okay, once again, our measurements are very precise, so our assembly has to be precise. The connecting rod's in place. It fits perfectly within the groove here on the crankshaft. If you look at it from the top, it's centered there on the axis. See how the axis runs right up through the middle? Let's look at the motion. Let's expand the joints. Excuse me. Animate model. All right, so that's what we expect at this point. We've got one revolute. There's nothing there. We're not animating that particular joint there where the connecting rod and the crankshaft are coming together. So it's moving around with the crankshaft at this point, the connecting rod is. We'll fix that as we go forward. We're going to add piston pin next, and that's going to have a revolute joint. We're going to center the piston pin with the center of this opening, that cylinder there, open cylinder. Then we'll bring in the piston, and it will have a fixed, a rigid joint with piston pin. And we'll see what the motion is there, because we're going to come back and add another motion that will kind of create a constraint and force the movement that we're looking for. So next step, piston pin. There's my piston pin with the rounded top. Insert into current design. So there it is. Let's roll it over, because we're going to want it there at 90 degrees. Let's move it out a bit, and we'll move it up. All right, so the center of this cylinder needs to match up with the center of this. Check your caps. Notice how my rounded edges are going to be flush with the rounded edges of the block, those arced edges. So that looks good. I'm going to click OK. Zoom in. Let's create our joint. It's going to be a revolute so that this can spin around the pin. The open cylinder here, that is. And position that snap point. So I've got that cutout is a visual thing. It actually makes this process harder. I'll zoom in real tight. Okay, I don't want the edges. I want that whole band, that body there. Now notice, I got 3 control points inside of that band that are centered. I want the middle one. So if I hold the control key and move, there's the end, the middle, the other end. I want the middle one. Okay, click. That is the center of my design on that pin, because that center has to match up perfectly to the center of this cylinder. Let's move it over. Grab it. There we are. There's the cylinder. Notice I also have 3 points there. So let's hold the control key. There's the middle one, the other end. I want the middle one. I'm holding the control, click. All right. Now let's go to the top view. Notice how the end of my piston pin is curved and matching the block curve exactly. Okay? If yours is not, you may need to rotate it around so that it is. Or find the positioning if your measurements are off. Okay, I'm going to click OK. Home position. There I am. Now, we're going to bring the piston in. Our motion hasn't changed. If I animate model, the whole thing's turning. Let's bring in the piston. Insert into current design. There's the piston. All right, so my holes are here, and the ends of the pin, those need to line up. Just to make it easier from a visual standpoint, I'm going to rotate it around 90 degrees, and I'm going to pull it out. All right, let's click OK. We're going to create a rigid joint because this pin doesn't need to rotate within that piston. Joint, let's change our motion to rigid. The piston will be component 1. I want this outside edge. All right, so there's the cylinder. Because this is a round face, it's not a square or flat face, I'm going to have to choose the cylinder, control. I want the outer edge, click, there's that. I'm going to have the same problem with the piston pin. So control key, there's the outer edge, click OK. Home position. All right, so everything's in place. If we look at it from the top view, let's hide that crankshaft. Look there, that piston is fitting very nicely into the block. All right, let's go look at it from the front. Notice I don't have any overhang on my edges. It's flush. Fits perfectly in there. All right, back to the home. Bring our crankshaft back. Let's animate and see what we've got. That's not the motion we're looking for, is it? Not at all. All right, we need another joint. We need a joint between the piston and the engine block. It's going to be a slide joint because we want this piston to slide up and down within the block. That is going to act like a constraint that allows the connecting rod to rotate around this part of the crankshaft and for the piston pin to rotate or within the other end of the connecting rod. To do this, let's make it easy. Let's hide the crankshaft. I'm going to hide the piston pin. I'm going to hide everything other than the block and the piston, basically. All right, let's create a joint. I'm going to create a joint with the middle of the top of this cylinder to the middle of the top of this arc. So there we go. I'm selecting that edge right there. Okay. Control key, there's the center point. I want this arc. Control, there's the other center point. And that looks good. Let's go to the front, check it. Yep, we're still flush on the edges. It's flush across the top. Our motion, that's not right. Slide. Okay, from rigid to slide, we'll click OK. Now, home position, let's animate that joint. Now that joint is not moving. The slide is correct, but it's moving too far, isn't it? Do we have to add joint limits? No, we don't, actually. The Other joints that we have in place with the other components will actually constrain the motion of this joint. Let's bring back our other components. All right. Let's go back up to our first revolute and let's animate the model. Okay, so you see that the slide is only going down as far as it can go with the connecting rod. The connecting rod is rotating at the bottom around the piston pin. There's a rotation at the top of the connecting rod around the crankshaft as the crankshaft turns. All these joints are working together to limit the motion of the piston, but it's also drawing the piston up and down. All right, when you've got this, you're done.